Okay, so we're trying to stick to time because we've got a fabulous reception to take you to in the South Bank Roof Garden. If you've not registered, then let us know. We've been talking today quite a bit about the backlash that a lot of the politicians began to feel, and a lot of the campaigners, frankly, feel as well, and certainly don't we know it. So I'm pleased to introduce Alex, who's going to be talking about the whole premise of the Hill of Hysteria. Thank you.
Today I will take you on a little bit of a hike. Up a cool mountain, so don't worry, we won't sweat too much, you will be alright. And during our hike today, up on what seems to be a pretty legendary mountain, the Hill of Hysteria, I'll tell you a story about 13 cities who managed to get across and how they've done it. I'll reveal a little magic trick, how you can fundamentally change the solutions you see in your head with just a single word. But be careful, there are many dangers today on our way. If you look around carefully, we might come across the lakes of don't do it, it's political suicide. Stay away from those. And I would say, let's start, let's begin. And we begin here in London. I would like to invite you to close your eyes real quick and imagine, let's use our imagination. You walk outside, the sun on your skin, a little breeze. You walk along an 8-year-old holding your hand. And that 8-year-old looks up to you and asks, why are there cars everywhere? Why is it so hot here? And why can't I move the way I would like to move? How would you answer that question? And indeed, we all know, and I think it's quite ironic that we're talking here this week. Our cities are getting hotter. There are more and more heavy rainfalls. The independence of our children is getting lower and lower and lower. Road traffic is the global #1 cause of death for our children and teenagers. The need for change is really big. And at the same time, nothing is really moving forward if we look at the big picture. The reason might be resistance. Like here. Okay, maybe not like here, because that actually looks quite nice. But if we go back in time on that beautiful square 2 years earlier, this was a massive car park. And I don't need to tell you what kind of voices were around when they announced that they will remove it. But today, nobody here would like to go back to this being a car park. So it seems like the need for change is really big. And once we've gone through the change, everybody is really happy. We see mayors being re-elected who dared to approach these bold changes. So why? Why aren't we moving quicker towards a more livable future, towards more livable cities? And before we actually get climbing on our mountain, we need to look back in history to understand why exactly it is so hard to change. So going back about 100 years, our streets had lots of different functions. Commerce, children were playing, a social space to interact with our neighbors, with our friends. And then the car came along, the mass production of the car came along, and we were able to move much quicker. And many children on the road which were playing were surprised by those quick cars. The result, let's not talk about that result, but we knew we needed to change. And we came up with an idea, okay, if we give cars more space, we can drive quicker, and then we're quicker at home to be able to spend more time with our loved ones. Now that's a pretty good idea. Everybody wants to spend more time with their loved ones, be on the road less. So we took that to the goal, that was our goal, and we optimized for that traffic flow. Let's add a lane, be home even quicker, every minute counts. We really want to do that. And over the last 70 years, we have achieved time savings with that of being home quicker of exactly 0 minutes. So we've given the entirety of public space to mobility in order to have no real benefit. And if we look at the graph here, we see how far we travel on a daily basis. And that distance, that has changed dramatically, but we spent the same amount of time on our roads to the detriment of the independence of our children, the temperatures in our city, and so on. So if we want to change, well, actually, let's go back to that one real quick. Now we have to travel so far that lots of people are dependent on also going that far. The supermarkets are at the edge of town, schools are far away, your friends live far away, work is further away, so humans are becoming dependent on going that far. And if we remove something of which people are dependent on, it feels like withdrawal. Of course people are going to resist that change. So we know there is always resistance in that when we do. And so I went out and I asked 13 mayors who went through successful projects, speed limit reduction, low traffic neighborhoods, different policies which fight the car dominance, on how they've actually done it. And they have told me a remarkably similar story. We know that if we want to go from today until a better future, there will be a slight obstacle in the way. There will be some people which are disadvantaged by that. Okay. There will be negative headlines in the newspaper, because that's sort of how our media landscape works. There will be shitstorms on social media. There will be petitions that are signed by people. There will be court cases. And there will be death threats in almost all cases. And suddenly, what looked like a quick jump could get us across looks like an enormous obstacle in the way. And that is the hill of Hysteria, and that's the one we're going to climb together now. The first part of our climb is quite foggy. After 80 years of car-dependent, car-centric planning, almost nobody remembers how it was actually like when that was not the case. The future is quite uncertain of what it actually feels like. And we have lots of facts on that. But the feeling of will I actually be okay in the future? That is quite distant to many people. A council head here in London has told me that they've analyzed it. They've asked people, 60% were for the change, but 95% of his inbox was just full of hate. A very loud minority fighting the change. People feel like it's their birthright to park their car outside their street. If you put your couch there, you'll get into trouble. But the car is fine. So we need to keep going. We need to keep pushing until we reach the peak. But I need to disappoint you, and I'm so sorry about that. But that's just a lovely vacation picture from last summer for me, because our peak looks like this. Construction works, it's loud, people need to adapt, somebody will be late, some bakery will close, whatever, but some bakery will definitely close, and there will be headlines everywhere saying, the world will end! That was it! Political suicide! Oh. Was that me? So things don't work out at that stage, right? But then something interesting happens. After that period, we humans are incredibly good at adapting. That's what has benefited us so often across time. So what then actually happens is there is a decline in resistance. Many of the worries that citizens had turn out to be unjustified. And many benefits arise, which nobody has really thought about. Being like, okay, this is way calmer, way nicer than it was before. I actually prefer it that way. And nobody wants to go back. And we call it the hill of hysteria. And resistance is a very natural part of any transition, of any ambitious transition. And it is temporary. It always fades away. Okay. But I was talking about emotions earlier. And that might be a problem. mayors and political leaders having a certain fear of not being re-elected, their popularity sort of dropping, they seeming out of touch of what the wider society actually wants. And to understand what happens there, we'll need to look at the city of Graz real quick. What you see here is public support over time. Back in the 80s, and the pattern is the same whether we look at project at the 70s or today, Graz introduced a lower speed limit of 30 kilometers per hour, 20 miles per hour, all over the city. And they did lots of research and realized, okay, the majority of people is for this, let's do it. And at the day of the implementation, they did a survey and they found out it's only 44% of people who was actually for it. And they did everything right regarding communication strategies, regarding how to present it to the public, how to implement it. There was nothing wrong with it. And nevertheless, it dropped to 44%. And the opposition was furious, being like, you can't do this, the majority is against this, the world will end. And a month later, we were back at 60%. 6 months later, we were back at 72%, 77% after about a year. This has been way more popular than anybody would have thought and has become a role model for all of Europe. So why do we only hear these people? Why do we only hear the loud minority who's really against the change? And where's everyone else? Because when we look at it and when we ask the right questions, we realize there's a large majority who has better things to do in order, other than talking about how they exactly want the street to look like. They are worried about their next stressful day at work. They think about what to cook the children for dinner tonight. And they don't have time to really engage in a conversation. They will enjoy it once it's different, but they won't be part of that conversation. Okay. But what happens is that these people listen very carefully to the public discourse. It's a fact we call pluralistic ignorance, where the majority of people are quite progressive and for the change, but they think they're in a minority. So they don't dare to speak up because, honestly, I'm not up for receiving all that shitstorm then. And so there's a perception that is biased toward of the status quo. Well, actually, most people would really like to, like the change, like a better, more livable future. And what happened in most of these 13 cities were that those mayors who were brave enough to push through were not just re-elected, but re-elected again and again and again with added and boosts in popularity. Okay, nice. But how have they done it? Is there a special secret sauce in how to get over the hill of hysteria? There are 4 main categories that came up again and again and again in how successful leaders have gone through this very difficult time. The first one is resilience. The mayor of Pontevedra in Spain has shared with me that he needed to stand behind his principles. And his principles were creating a more livable, safe city for children. And he cannot stand back. And if it costs him his job, it costs him his job. But those are his values. And this is what he was elected for. And he's been re-elected 6 times now. It was quite popular. It doesn't work without broad coalitions. We know that roughly 80% of people are really in favor of those changes and getting them on board and letting them know that this will be a difficult time. But if you create a movement together, not for low traffic neighborhoods, but for more just, more livable neighborhoods in terms of narrative, then we might be able to create a big enough movement to counteract that very loud minority. Public participation is always important in order to address the concerns, but don't let that be hijacked by those people who never want to be persuaded in any case. And that's a bit of the golden sauce in addressing concerns, but staying on course, staying on track with what you actually want to achieve. And then it's about language. It's about the narrative. And who can let me know on what's usually written on that sign here? You see them everywhere around town. Road closed. Exactly. And if you think about it, what images do you have in your head when you say road closed? And what images do you have in your head when we say road open? The language we use defines the problems we see and the solutions we enable. And we can only build solutions based on what we, to some degree, also measure. And as long as we define that street by traffic flow and miles, instead of smiles of the people who live there, we will optimize it in order for flow and not for miles. And the language is a really, really powerful tool to get there. Okay. So I'm really sorry that you can't unsee this now, and every time you walk around London now and you see road closed sign, it will pop up in your head. But there is one thing which all cities I talked to had in common, and that was this. Somebody told me that, yeah, Alex, nice story. Okay, you did the research, good, good. But it doesn't work here. We're not Paris, we're not Amsterdam. No, this doesn't work here. A couple years ago, I was talking with the city council in Helsinki in Finland, a city known for its 6-month-long, super icy, super dark winters. And they had the ambition of Vision Zero, as so many others. And people were saying, yeah, that doesn't work in Helsinki. We have ice, we have snow, nobody else can do it. We definitely can't do it. Last year they've done it. 0 traffic deaths in the entire city of Helsinki. It can be done, because the second thing that everybody had in common was that somebody said it can't be done, and then it was done. And we've transformed places that used to be for cars for people, and it could be done. And unless you're Berlin, doesn't work in Berlin for some reason, again and again, but unless you're Berlin, it works. And that's what we call the Hill of Hysteria, and it is a bit of a hike. You need to be sort of well prepared for it. And I'm really excited to hear your stories about how you have already encountered the Hill of Hysteria. And please come up to us, please chat with us in order to build sort of the broadest coalition, the broadest alliance in how to deal with the Hill of Hysteria. Because resistance is real, but it is temporary. And people will be really happy for that change that we create. If you want to read more, there's a QR code. There are QR codes all over our flyers here, and there is a publication online you can download. And then I would say thank you very much for joining me on that hike.
Thanks very much, Alex.